Alright, after all the complexity of this chapter and a lot of new content for many of you, this lesson is going to seem a little bit easier. In fact, some of the examples in particular might seem a little silly. There's two definitions here, but they're not terms that are actually going to be applied to the test, but they're simply ways to differentiate the two different kinds of mistakes that we make in putting phrases in our sentences. First, a misplaced phrase. Simply, the word of the phrase is too far from that word modified, such that the meaning is confused or lost. It's just so far away that it doesn't make sense. Another type is a dangling phrase. It's simply where we have that descriptive phrase in there and we forgot to put in the word that the phrase is trying to modify. This is one of those examples where we might come back with, well, you know what I meant, which is never a good idea as a writer. How do we fix this? Well, for each phrase, any kind of phrase, infinitive, participial, prepositional, gerund, in this case, only those first three on the screen are actually describing ones. So we're looking at descriptive phrases being placed. The gerund phrases are misplaced. The sentence won't work because it won't actually be the correct direct object or the correct subject, etc. But for infinitives, participles, and prepositional phrases, we're looking at phrases that are describing. Well, we want them to be next to the word or the phrase they're actually describing. If the word to be modified is not near the phrase, your options are move the word modified to be next to that phrase, move the whole phrase, or in the case of a dangling phrase, you got to add the word in. In these two sentences, students took the tests in their language arts classes. Students in their language arts classes took their tests. You might look at those two sentences and first thought is that they're saying the same thing. And they're similar words, only a slight change to possessive from the first to second, but they're not communicating the same information. For example, the first sentence is implying that the students were in the language arts classes when they took the tests. The first sentence could answer the question of where did they take their tests? They took them in their language arts classes. Okay. The second one doesn't indicate where they took their tests. The second sentence actually implies that it's only the students in their language arts classes took tests. So it wouldn't necessarily apply to other subject areas. So for example, if the first one, when we used to have paper and pencil standardized tests like the MCAs, our students would usually take them in their first or second hour classroom teacher's room, regardless of what subject that was. As a language arts teacher, I oftentimes administered the math tests because this was the location determined for that. So the first sentence, students took the test in the language arts classes, that would make sense, whether it's not necessarily a language arts test. But second sentence implies that only the students in their language arts classes took the tests and wouldn't necessarily apply to students who weren't taking language arts classes. Those are a little bit more serious, but look at the practice, you'll find that a lot of them are kind of silly, and that's okay. It's okay to be amused by the simplicity of, if you start moving things around a sentence, putting things in the wrong spot, how much it can confuse your meaning, let alone your audience. But it's also a good reminder in your own writing to be as clear as possible. You should never have to fall back on, well, you know what I meant, in terms of your own communication and your own message. Good work this chapter, and good hunting today.